dispensary, of course, my being in the dispensary world for over 15 years, I'm very protective of the world that I've created, and I wanted to make sure that we were shown in a positive light. And when I'm dealing with incredible writers and guys that wrote for Beavis and Butthead and have multiple Emmys, you sort of learn to not challenge their sense of humor. And I would always say to them, are you sure this is funny? I don't want to make fun of us. And they said, let's start with the stereotypes, because that's what people are assuming we are the stereotypical stoners, and then let's shatter them. And so part of Disjointed, and it is filmed in front of a live studio audience, and if people think the laugh is bad now, wait till next season when people actually are fans of the show and they come by, because there's something about cannabis that makes people really excited. And they, for some reason, even a joke that's not even that funny is outrageously funny because Kathy Bates is holding a joint at the same time. And with that said, we were able to, it's a gift and a curse is what I always joke, and we have that line in the show calling it's a curse. But we have a responsibility to show the world what we do for a living and not make it look bad. But we also have a responsibility to make us all laugh, because this is funny. And we do live in a gray area. And when the writers put me into a writer's room and they ask me questions like, so Dina, is it okay for me to smoke weed on the street? And I say yes, as long as you can smoke a cigarette there. And they say, but what if we're standing on federal property? Can I smoke weed? Well, it's very gray, so it's not okay, but I know people that do it. This is something that they find fascinating, and so they want to kind of, get deeper and get into this. And I think that the 10 episodes of Disjointed, we were able to highlight not just being stoned, but the fact that PTSD is highlighted very strongly. We have a security guard that's dealing with major trauma, major PTSD, and yet is not a smoker. And they are convincing him to use cannabis, which sort of unlocks his mind and is allowing him to heal. It's not saying that it's healed immediately, but we're now starting to work on healing this guy. We showed that the banking system is screwed up because, as we know, we're a cash system. We're stuck. Our hands are tied. The banks won't work with us. What are we supposed to do with all this cash? How are we supposed to be safe? These are issues that are really important. And then on top of it, you fall in love with these cast of 10 goofy people and realize they're harmless, they're not hurting anyone, and boom, the DEA comes in. And it's a reality, a harsh reality that we're faced with. My partner, Jason, sitting in the front row, we've been raided in our dispensary 3 times over the last 15 years. They've never pressed charges against us. We've never broken the law in the state. But because we're successful and because we get a lot of attention in the media, they target us. And so it's something that needs to stop. And with Disjointed, we're able to talk about this. It's really kind of fun.
Okay. Well, Tom, I'd love to get your thoughts on this as the editor of a marijuana magazine. How do you feel being a part of marijuana media? What do you feel is your editorial scope, or even like your mission as a publisher of a print product?
Well, I'm not the publisher, I'm the editor, but we're a business magazine, so we're not High Times, we're not a consumer lifestyle magazine. So that helps a little bit when we're kind of we're a B2B magazine, so we're kind of focused at the retail level, and then we emanate out from there. So when I get overwhelmed because this is such a massive industry with all these separate verticals and and everything, I bring it down to that. But of course, you can't do a business magazine in the cannabis space without dealing with the cultural aspects, the community aspects, the legal aspects, everything that involves real living, the medical aspects, the stories, the real life implications of this plant and how people deal with it are so real and often, so monumentally moving. That they're pulled in. They're a part of the story. They're a part of everyone's story. And I've done, I don't even know how many interviews and profiles with people, and I'm just overwhelmed, because everyone's, most people are bringing real, something really important to them to the table in this space. Now we're seeing a lot of new people coming in. So, I feel lucky. I feel fortunate to be working in an area now that is so rich.
Well, I would love to know, because I'm so curious, why do you think there are so many print publications popping up? I mean, the print industry is, you know, we don't like to say it's dying because we're Variety, but you know, it faces some challenges. Why are there so many magazines? I just heard about a new one that's launching called Sensi, I think. Like,
well, Sensi's been, I think, been around for a little bit. I think maybe the people who started them were maybe stoned when they made the decision. I'm not exactly sure.
but is the advertising money
we live
there?
in a digital world. You know, I don't know. You know, listen, I've been asked this question about print. Is print dead for the last 20 years? And it's still around. So people love magazines, and they especially love magazines that they love. So, but you know, the economics are tough, and we live in a digital world. So just going with print doesn't make any sense because you have to have your digital properties. I can't answer it. I don't know why. I don't know why. You know.
I mean, the logic would tell me that the advertising money is there. You know,
Well,
it's like
when I would pick up a Hymes magazine for the last 10 years, you'd skip through and it would be the same companies, same ads, always. You just kind of knew, okay, the third page is going to be advanced nutrients, and now you're opening it up and it's like, oh, what's that company? Oh, that's a new company. So there are a lot of companies coming out that are
no doubt. The need, the marketing, branding need is acute, okay? It is, I've never seen anything like it, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. So no matter what it is, whether it's print, whether it's a video, whether it's documentaries, whether it's television, there's a crying need for people to brand themselves and get themselves out there and distinguish themselves from the next vape pen.
okay.
Right.
Steve, you want to chime in?
I was going to say also that people are being blocked from going on Facebook and Google, so it's not like we don't know how to advertise digitally, but it's not an option.
It's true.
You have a lot of exposure, Facebook's going to shut you down, you get blocked on Google.
Yeah.
Even myself, we're in the CBD business, which doesn't get you high, strictly medicinal, and ours comes from hemp, which based on hemp law should be legal, but we have FDA situations, FDA situations, all kinds of complications, and we can't advertise.
It's actually really funny. I came into a problem when we were filming the show. I had to basically pick products to put on the set. So the set would look like a real dispensary. And the question was, are we going to create our own fake products for the set? And I said, no, no, no. You want this to look real. You want people to be really confused. Is this a real dispensary or not? So I said, we're going to bring in these real brands. Well, this was scary for Netflix. They didn't know how to handle this. Their lawyers were like, well, I don't know about this. And I said, don't charge them. How about give them free product placement? And every single brand on that show got free product placement, but it's the first time that we've really had an opportunity in front of over 100 million viewers worldwide to put our products out there.
And part of the challenge too right now is, so Facebook just came out 2 days ago with new regulations stating that basically any content that has any cannabis, drug use, violence is going to be banned from having pre-roll, mid-roll, or technically even branded content. So actually branded content from a technical standpoint is whether it's Facebook or YouTube, some of the OTTs are not in theory allowed. So, and that's on top of all the other challenges with cannabis regulations. And so that's the bad news. The good news is the FTC and the FCC can't regulate something that's illegal. So, if you think it's challenging now, wait till the federal government does decide if there's things, and then all the government regs get to come in. And if you think it's challenging, think about what you can and can't do with beer, what you can and can't do with alcohol or hard liquor or obviously tobacco. So those things are going to be massive game changers. And so for the next 2 or 3 years, it's actually, there's some interesting things that can be done in the absence of regulations. Of course, a lot of these different distribution platforms are self-regulating. And so, there's a whole bunch of myriad challenges in terms of what you can do and what you can show and what you can feature.
Right, so Josh, as someone who deals in content, do you feel like there's an opening, there's a lane here for more marijuana-themed video, television, whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just how you approach it. I think that if you're approaching it like cannabis is the focus of the subject, there's certainly, I still think, a big need for an education side. People are interested, they want to learn things. What we try and do is we're pretty lifestyle focused, prohibited. We try and create formats and shows and concepts that are driven around talent that happens to feature 85% of the time cannabis consumption around it. But you know, and there is some low-hanging fruit. It's like, let's do this with cannabis, you know, let's do this with weed, you know, and so there's those sort of obvious things. But as we grow and go forward, you know, a lot of people say, well, how do we destigmatize cannabis use amongst people, you know, in entertainment? And I think the best way to do is just let it be, meaning just show it in an obvious way. You don't have to feature it. You don't have to make a big deal. You don't have to have someone talking in the sort of in-depth moment about how it's helping them. Just go use it just like they drink a glass of wine on, you know, House of Cards or any other sort of show. So I think once we kind of get over the novelty of it, and once we're kind of like, ooh, this show has weed with it, then at that point, we're going to start getting into really good content. Not that there isn't good content now, but we're going to start focusing on the content first, the stories, the talent, and then, yeah, there's going to happen to be cannabis consumption. And we have a bunch of different formats that are both either digital first on our platform, or we're starting to pitch out to networks, and the networks are fascinated by it. But, you know, cannabis content is still one of the biggest draws, whether it's CNBC or obviously Vice, and Viceland has a lot of cannabis content.
Right. And all those shows like Drug Wars and,
yeah.
you know.
You know, I think about this often when we have this conversation, and I always think back to the movie Poltergeist, which was made so many years ago, and there's a scene in there where the parents are like, you know, they're smoking some pot, and it's never mentioned, never an issue, never anything. And I'm like, here we are so many decades later, and we're having this idiotic conversation where when the normalcy of this thing was already like put up on the screen by Steven Spielberg so many years ago, and it's like I don't know, I'm just losing my patience with the destigmatization, when for many of us it's really happened. You know, the stigma is a part of that old drug war, you know, mentality. You know, enough is enough.
But it can also, I mean, to be a little devil's advocate, right? It can be the idea of utilizing that to help market whatever you're doing. So it's like, yeah, on the one hand, you don't, you know, you just show it, right? You don't need to make a big deal.
Your writers are going to use it all. They'll use all of that, and it's good.
And it's going to help draw, because at the end of the day, the viewers, and it gets, anyways, yeah, there's all kinds of
Well, Josh, before we move off of you, can you tell us about Pimp My Grow and it's in production currently?
Yeah, so we're in pre-production actually. So it's a partnership with us and Don and Aaron of DNA Genetics, and Be Real is going to be both sort of helping promote the concept, exec producing, and he's going to be in a couple episodes. You know, basically, you know, sort of my mandate as running content at Prohibited is to try and figure out how to create sort of tweener shows, and it's between digital and broadcast, and it's between sort of endemic cannabis consumers and the non-endemic. And I think, and I'll kind of loop into the specifics, but just to kind of paint the broad picture, the way I look at it is, you know, my generation, I'm 40, and certainly the older generation, when we started consuming cannabis, it was also part of our lifestyle, our identification. We identified as a stoner in a good way, right? It was like, oh, this is illicit, you know, this whole thing, and counterculture, good stoners, right? and then the younger generation, the people that I work with who are in their 20s, it's like they just happen to consume. They don't wear t-shirts, you wouldn't even know. They don't make a big deal about it, whether they're eating or it's literally part of like the way.
Well, we survived Nancy Reagan's, you know, the war on drugs.
Right. So
difference.
It's a difference, 100%. We blazed a trail and we made it easy for them to just, I just happen to smoke whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, they, because it is a part of their identity, you can't, you know, they also don't necessarily want to be hammered over, hit over the head with it. So.
But also these days, Derek doesn't even talk about cannabis anymore.
Right.
I mean, so it's so different at school.
Yeah.
They teach different things.
Yeah.
So for Pimp My Grow, our goal was to say, how can we create a show that's going to be authentic? So for the endemic crowd, the growers, everyone in here who's in the industry who knows who's going to be waiting for, you know, the one mistake that's made, or the, you know, I can't wait to comment. You know, that's got to, and especially with Don and Aaron, because those guys are the gurus in what they do. It's got to be 100% authentic. So that's a given. At the same time, how can we get a new audience? How can they get these younger kids who, sure, they smoke, but if you just hammer it over their home, like, hey, you're a stoner, so you're going to love this, they're just never going to tune in. Right. It's got to be interesting. It's got to be broadcast quality. It's got to be, so that's sort of what we're looking to do.
Kids these days, I mean, right? They just go down the street and buy their weed at a dispensary. We didn't have that back in the day.
Oh, I was going to say.
We had like Hank,
I had a little like
I gotta know someone that knew
I
someone.
had to talk to Tackle Box Todd.
Tackle Box Todd, see?
And then you'd spend an hour de-seeding it, come on.
That's
We
right.
don't wanna go back to those
Yeah, we do
days.
not want those days.
Meanwhile, we're not past the time where governments, state, local, and federal are like, just so concerned about the message to the kids. It's primary for them, and I think in California, they're even considering a bill that would outlaw branded swag.
They just got rid of that.
So they got rid of that one, okay, so I'm glad.
The First Amendment one there.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent, because that would have, that would have been devastating, but those types of things, so, cannabis content creators are always kind of walking this line where just even the perception that what industry doesn't market to new consumers, I mean, that's what industries do,
Right.
but,
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I'd love to talk to you since, CBDs are in this sort of gray area because they're, not